It's Tuesday, May 16. In the headlines, in local news, Prime Minister Andrew Holness and the UN Secretary General hold bilateral talks. In business news, NCB Financial Group reports dip in net profit. Regionally, Trinidad and Tobago awarded close to 1 billion TT dollars in Piarco Airport matter. Internationally, millions of children worldwide missed routine jabs during COVID. And in sports, Veronica Campbell-Brown honored in the United States. This is the news on PBC Jamaica. I'm Simone Absalom Gale. The United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres is bemoaning the lack of implementation of the U.S. $100 billion pledge by developed countries to assist developing states. The UN Secretary General, speaking in Jamaica on Monday, explained that the COVID pandemic highlighted the plight of small and middle-income countries where disaster funding is concerned.
Middle-income countries, and particularly relevant for small island developing states, do not face adequate debt relief mechanisms and do not face the possibility to have access to concessional funding at the levels that would be necessary because they are considered to be middle-income countries, which again is a deep injustice because small island development states in particular have a high level of vulnerability because of the structure of their economies, because of their geographic location, their size, and because of their enormous impact they suffer in relation to climate change. So there is a serious moral problem with the international financial system.
In 2009, developed countries agreed to mobilize a sum per year by 2020 for climate action in developing countries. However, this goal has never been achieved.
Much more can be done in new instruments that allow, for instance, swaps between debt and investment in adaptation for climate change. So there are lots of things that can be done if there is political will to do so, even if we will not be able to solve, and I hope we will be sooner or later, the moral problem and the power problem. And I want to express our deep solidarity with Jamaica, with the SIDS, in relation to these moral, power and practical problems.
Both Prime Minister Holness and the Secretary General Guterres agreed on the importance of a comprehensive approach to address vulnerability to climate change, natural disasters and external economic shocks. Mr. Holness reiterated his commitment to the cause as co-chair of the group of Friends for SDGs working towards international financial reform.
We wish to assure you of Jamaica's strong commitment to this work, this very important work, and of Jamaica's commitment to multilateralism and the central role the United Nations plays in ensuring that these very important matters of the reform of the global financial architecture, that it is undertaken, that it is successful, and that it is beneficial for developing countries, and in particular small island developing states like Jamaica.
Meanwhile, Prime Minister Holness says the crisis in Haiti requires greater efforts from the international community. He says CARICOM is doing its part using resources available.
We led a mission to Haiti, which I led, and we had very meaningful discussions with the stakeholders there, and that process is advancing. I take the view, Excellency, that with greater effort we can see a breakthrough towards a better and broader consensus towards a solution in Haiti.
Mr. Holness and the Secretary General of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres, both spoke at a press brief at the Office of the Prime Minister following bilateral discussions on a range of issues, including the situation in Haiti and climate change. The UN boss was on a 2-day working visit in Jamaica. He visited several historic sites during his visit, including Seville Heritage Park, Devon House, and the Art Walk in downtown Kingston. He also met with staff at UN House. He left the island on Monday. The Crime Monitoring Oversight Committee, CMOC, says it is impressed with the advancements that have been made in the Jamaica Constabulary Force, JCF. Chairman of CMOC, Lloyd Distant, notes the increased presence of officers in the streets, adding that it is a result of approximately 1,217 new recruits annually. He adds that commendation should also be given to how the force has approached its training program. Mr. Distant pointed out that the officers are so well trained that Caribbean neighbors have sought to poach them from the JCF. He's quoted saying, "The people in the Cayman Islands and BVI and Turks and Caicos, they're all coming to raid our officers." End quote. CMOC, which was established in 2020, is an independent body comprising non-partisan stakeholders. His words follows last weekend's successful staging of the inaugural Jamaica Constabulary Force Expo. It showcased technology and skills of the nation's officers and impressed and captivated hundreds of patrons who attended. The National Water Commission is advising that it will be suspending operations at the Kirkland Relift and Stirling Castle Tank in St. Andrew from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. on Thursday, May 18 and on Friday, May 19. This is to continue scheduled network activities to be carried out. As a result of this exercise, customers will experience water supply disruptions and are being encouraged to store for use during the period. Areas to be impacted include West Kirkland Heights, Forest Way, East Kirkland Heights, Kirkland Avenue, sections of Red Hills Road, Keith Close, Stirling Castle Heights, Thompson Boulevard, Thompson Close, sections of Swain Spring Road, Queen Hill Drive, and roads leading off, Cleopatra Avenue, also Stirling Castle Heights, and roads leading off. The NWC regrets any inconvenience that may be caused and craves patience and understanding of its valued customers. The Jamaica Defence Force, JDF, will be conducting training exercises in and around Friendship, Orange Park, and Lidford community in St. Anne over the period Tuesday, May 16 to Friday, May 19. The JDF is advising residents that there is no need to be alarmed by the presence of soldiers, as the training exercises in their community will not involve any live firing and therefore pose no danger. Residents are asked not to interfere with and/or move training aids. In the event that unexploded ordnances or paraphernalia are found, please report it to the JDF headquarters at telephone number 876-960-8776. That's 876-960-8776. Members of the public who may have concerns about the presence of soldiers in their area may contact the JCF at 876-960-8776. It's time now for this week's Living Healthy Report.
To mask or not to mask? That is the question.
Masking is one of the measures that we do recommend to lower risk. The recommendation is not for everyone to wear a mask everywhere all of the time. It's really about knowing the type of setting that you're in, where you're going to be, putting a mask, making sure that it fits well over your nose and mouth, particularly when you're in indoor settings where ventilation is poor, when you can't distance, and especially if you're in an at-risk group.
I'll give you a practical example because I flew back to Geneva yesterday. I was in 3 airports, 2 airplanes, took 2 trains, 2 buses. I was traveling for 11 hours yesterday. I chose to wear a mask throughout that trip because that's a very rare day that I will spend that much time in a congregated setting with lots of people. And given the transmission of the virus at the moment, I just really didn't want to miss work this week or end up being positive. And it could still happen. It doesn't reduce risk to 0. Right. But it just basically, for that very sort of high exposure 12 hours, I wore a mask, which is reducing my risk. Other people are reducing their risk because they're taking care of loved ones and they don't want to lose the right to care or the capacity to care. So people are wearing masks for different reasons.
In the business report, NCB Financial Group reports dip in net profit. We have those details plus your usual market updates with Danita Rodney.
NCB Financial Group is reporting a drop in net profit for its second quarter ended March 2023. According to reports, earnings were down by approximately $4.9 billion when compared to the similar period in 2022. Deputy CEO for NCBFG, Dennis Cohen, provided a breakdown.
The group reported net profit of $4.2 billion attributable to shareholders for the 6 months ended March 2023, representing a 59% decline relative to the prior year. Our operating revenues of $61.2 billion fell by 12% or $8.1 billion. Reduced net results from insurance activities was the main driver for the fall in revenues, growing by $97.5 million, as increased net interest income were offset by higher credit impairment losses and lower gains on foreign currency and investment activities, stemming from lower asset prices and reduced trading of both fixed income and equities. Operating expenses of $51.4 billion fell by $342 million or 1%.
For your market updates, in foreign exchange trading for Monday, May 15, the US dollar sold for an average of $155.69. The Canadian dollar ended trading at $115.48. The pound sterling traded for $194.16, and the euro sold for an average of $172.18. In JSE trading, the JSE index declined by 1,073 points. The junior market index declined by 25 points. The combined market index declined by 1,238 points, and the All Jamaican Composite Index declined by 2,299 points. Overall market activity resulted from trading in 111 stocks, of which 40 advanced, 58 declined, and 13 traded firm. Stocks advanced for 138 Student Living Jamaica Limited, Access Financial Services Limited, and Berger Paints Jamaica Limited. Stocks declined for AMG Packaging and Paper Company Limited, Barita Investments Limited, and CAC 2000 Limited. Trading firm were 138 Student Living Jamaica Limited Variable Preference, Dollar Financial Services Limited, and Dolphin Cove Limited. The overall volume leaders were Trans Jamaican Highway Limited with over 7 million units, Wigton Wind Farm Limited Ordinary Shares with over 4 million units, and Tropical Battery Company Limited with over 2 million units. In regional stocks, in Trinidad and Tobago, zero securities traded. On the Barbados Stock Exchange, Goddard Enterprises Limited was the volume leader with over 900 shares. They were followed by Emera Deposit Receipt, which traded 5 shares. In regional business, in Antigua, Nigerian airline Air Peace is expected to take a 70% stake in Leah 2020 Limited, with the carrier to be run strictly on a commercial basis. Garfield Burford reports.
The government of Antigua and Barbuda saved the carrier from the brink of liquidation by placing it under administration. Since then, a court-appointed administrator, Cleveland Seaforth, has been piloting the operation. The focus now is on LEAT 2020 and ensuring it can meet the region's transportation needs. That's where a prospective partnership with Nigeria's Air Peace comes in.
So what we're moving now is to establish the AOC, right, the operating certificate for LEAT 2020, and to have this partnership with Air Peace, in which Air Peace will emerge as a 70% shareholder in the new LEAT.
The carrier is now operating with 2 aircraft and with a smaller footprint of routes, but that is set to change once the new arrangement is concretized.
They will bring some assets, and we will also acquire some assets as well, and hopefully we could have maybe 5-6 aircraft operating within the region under the name LEAT. We think that LEAT is a strong brand. It's a regional brand which we believe should be maintained, and I'm hoping that we can make this a reality so that we can protect the existing jobs and even to create new jobs to those employees who are displaced, especially the pilots.
The Prime Minister said the primary intention was to have had a LIAT owned by the regional governments, given how crucial regional transportation is. However, with that not having materialized, the Prime Minister says this is now the best route.
I know that there are many who would want to second guess that decision, but again, I don't know there's any other viable option at this point. I mean, I would accept that regional governments would have indicated a willingness to invest in a regional airline, but in terms of having firm commitments, we're not at that stage, and we need to move. I mean, regional travel is a major issue.
The head of government explained how LIAT's approach is likely to change under a private majority shareholder.
This airline will be run or operated strictly on a commercial basis. So it would not be a regional bus that will be operating on unprofitable routes. And if indeed it has to operate on profitable routes, then there has to be some MRG, some
minimum revenue guarantees.
So, we're looking forward to, the eventual operationalization of this new LIAT 2020, and we're committed to do all we can to ensure its viability and sustainability.
In international business, 3 major U.S. stock indexes rose with an upgrade of Facebook parent Meta providing a lift.
U.S. stocks rose across the board Monday, helped by Facebook parent Meta Platforms, which gained 2% after broker Loop Capital upgraded the shares to buy from hold. The Dow added about 0.1%, the S&P 500 climbed 0.3%, and the tech-heavy Nasdaq rose 0.2%. Large technology stocks continue to provide a lift to U.S. markets, but Contigo Global Director of Applied Research Melissa Brown says that kind of lift is unlikely to last.
At this kind of narrow breadth, this leadership that is really focused on a few names is really unsustainable. And so it may not, happen tomorrow, but at some point, some of these stocks, which are already a huge part, at least of the U.S. market, that doesn't tend, at least historically, that hasn't tended to continue. How do they become not as big a part of the U.S. market? Well, they have to come down. Those stocks have to come down.
Investors are watching talks over the debt ceiling, with President Joe Biden scheduled to meet with Republican Speaker of the House Kevin McCarthy and others Tuesday. The U.S. Treasury Department said late Monday it still expects to be able to pay the U.S. government's bills only through June 1st without a debt limit increase. While economic data out this week includes retail sales and an update on the housing market. On Monday, several Federal Reserve officials indicated they expect interest rates to stay high, at odds with market expectations for a rate cut before the end of the year.
In market data for oil futures steadied as support from a higher global demand forecast from the International Energy Agency was countered by weaker than expected Chinese economic data. Brent crude futures eased by 11 cents to $75.12 a barrel, while West Texas Intermediate crude was down 12 cents at $70.99. And that was the business report on PBCJ. I'm Danita Rodney.
In regional news, Trinidad and Tobago has been awarded final judgment of almost $1 billion in the Piarco International Airport corruption matter by Miami-Dade court judge. More in this report.
The final judgment comes after a 4-week trial in March when Raul Gutierrez Jr., Brian Quaitong, and Steve Ferguson were found guilty in the civil litigation initiated by the government in 2004.
19 years of litigation in the civil arena in the United States of America. There has been final judgment, some $131.3 million United States dollars, equivalent to nearly 1 billion Trinidad and Tobago dollars. Interest accrues at $9 million US dollars per annum on that. Steps are now being taken to enforce the judgment. The enforcement of the judgment will be pursued by asking for particulars of assets, etc.
The former Attorney General pointed out that the judgment is one of joint and several liability, which means you can pursue one or all of the defendants for the entire judgment sum. Mr. Al-Rawi said if the defendants want to stop the execution of the judgment, they would have to put up a bond.
There is a right of appeal, not yet invoked. That right of appeal stands separate from enforcement proceedings. If you wish to stop enforcement proceedings as a defendant in the United States, you must place a bond for the entire sum of the judgment plus 2 years' interest. In steps apart from that, the state is entitled to millions of dollars in legal fees, which the state is pursuing.
In the Bahamas, although there have been many discussions about potential amendments to the country's constitution, now there's an academic voice in the crowd suggesting a rewrite of the constitution altogether. Marlena Leonard reports.
What we should focus on, in my view, is the opportunity after 50 years to create a new constitution.
That's Dr. Ian Strawn, Executive Vice President and Campus President at UB North, responding to questions about whether the Bahamas should drop the British monarch as our head of state, saying we need to stop looking at individual issues and consider a complete overhaul of our constitution instead.
I think there are a number of things are converging. I think the recent Privy Council ruling following the Ian Winder decision throws into high focus the dysfunctional elements of our Constitution. And this is an opportunity for us to, again, have a national conversation about the kind of nation we want.
Dr. Strawn also suggests the revisions could also determine how we elect leadership in the country.
I'm one of those people who doesn't think that the first past the post system gives us the best model of representation. In other words, of the will of the people being represented. We've seen in our history where the popular vote has not translated into actually a party winning the government.
He says with 50 years under our belts, nothing restricts us from crafting a new way forward for the next 50.
Let's be bold, let's be optimistic, and let's believe in ourselves and believe that we can, just as we are convening to talk about these things as academics, that as a nation we could talk about the kind of country we want to have, and we can have a constitution that reflects the values that we have today.
Reporting for Our News, I'm Marlena Leonard.
The Ministry of Health in Grenada has reported a significant increase in the number of dengue fever cases. Shariana Blackman-Stevens has the details.
The Vector Control Department of the Ministry of Health is embarking on an education drive as the Ministry of Health reports a significant increase in the number of dengue fever cases. Acting Chief Medical Officer Dr. Sean Charles indicated that there are 20 reported cases. The CMO advised that while health surveillance officers and vector control intervention resources are deployed, measures are being taken to control further increases as the ministry keeps a close eye on the situation. According to Dr. Charles, 8 people have been hospitalized with dengue fever, with 3 being listed as severe. Justin Hector, Vector Control Officer in the Ministry of Health, says a major concern right now is second infection.
Hospitalized may eventually probably end up with severe dengue, and that means that they may have been infected at some point before, knowingly or unknowingly, by dengue. So now we have to engage in probably much more education in terms of enlightening people as to what exactly they should do.
Mr. Hector said Vector Control is embarking on a drive to educate people on the importance of preventing the spread of dengue fever and the implications it can have on the health system.
When it comes to people's attitude, based on the knowledge they have, as it relates to these issues, it is not compatible. And when you look at what they actually practice based on what they know, together with the attitude, there is a far gap between us. So all of that has to come together. People's attitude has to change.
CMO Charles said the ministry's current data revealed that the ages mostly affected are 5 to 14 years old and 25 to 44 years. He explained that 50% of the hospitalized cases of dengue fever are from the parish of St. Andrew, St. George, and St. Patrick, and they have all accounted for 25% each. The CMO is calling on all healthcare providers to be vigilant and to test persons displaying signs and symptoms of the condition. He said the situation is very, very serious and we need to take heed and do all that's necessary to prevent a major outbreak. Here are the signs and symptoms you need to pay attention to.
A high fever. What do I mean by high fever? I'm referring to temperatures as high as 106 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, other person may experience severe headaches, while others may experience intense eye pain. Others may have bone, joint, and muscle pain. Some may experience rashes, nausea, vomiting, and so on.
Cherry and Blackman Stephen, GBN News.
In international news, the United Nations says millions of children are at risk of contracting vaccine-preventable diseases such as measles and polio. In the Philippines, 1 million children were not immunized during the height of the COVID-19 pandemic. Al Jazeera's Barnaby Lowe reports.
A festive morning in one of the most densely populated communities in Manila. It began with a motorcade that ended in a gym, with music blaring, gift bags, and children in tears. It was a party to catch up on vaccinations.
We have to convince mothers, and the mothers have to convince their children. So we really have to make it enjoyable and, allay fears of our parents.
Mistrust of vaccines, particularly for children, peaked in 2017 after a backlash against the dengue jab Dengue. French manufacturer Sanofi said it was potentially harmful for those who've never had dengue fever. But at that point, the Philippine government had already administered at least one dose to more than 800,000 school children.
We got scared at the time because we were hearing children getting sick from dengue.
The scare led to a measles outbreak in 2019, and now health experts dread a repeat.
At least 67 million children around the world missed out on routine vaccinations between 2019 and 2021. That's according to UNICEF. Now here in the Philippines, 1 million children did not receive a single dose in 2021. One of the main reasons, the COVID-19 pandemic.
Philippines' pandemic lockdowns were some of the most restrictive and longest in the world.
When you put focus just on COVID-19 vaccination and response, then other essential health services like immunization are neglected. And aside from that, there were also the lockdowns, the restrictions. So parents, caregivers, they're afraid to bring their children to the health centers because they're afraid of, contracting the COVID-19 themselves.
The UNICEF says awareness events like this are necessary as governments play catch-up. But they will have to move quick as they're up against viruses that spread rapidly.
In sports, Jamaican rallycross driver Fraser McConnell and his X44 team maintained their top qualifying form to secure victory in round 3 at the Hydro X Prix in Scotland on Saturday. The triumph represents McConnell's inaugural win in Extreme E, while it also marks the first victory of the 2023 campaign for the reigning Season 2 champions. Currently occupying 4th place in the 10-team standings with 51 points, McConnell's X44 team looks ahead to the third event scheduled for July 8 to 9 at the Island X Prix in Sardinia, Italy. In other sporting news, retired sprinter Veronica Campbell-Brown received an honorary degree from the University of Arkansas in the United States. In her acceptance speech, she encouraged the graduates to be resilient in the face of challenges, highlighting that their achievement of graduate degrees is a testament to their determination and ability to overcome obstacles. She emphasized that every challenge presents an opportunity for growth and success. She acknowledged that failure can be a great teacher and advised the graduates to see it as a stepping stone towards improvement. Former financial controller at the Institute of Sport, popularly known as InSport, Andrew Wright, will remain behind bars until July 5. He has been charged in connection with the multi-million-dollar fraud at the agency. Mr. Wright was further remanded on Monday after a judge of the Supreme Court denied his application for bail. His co-accused, O'Neill Hope, Rodolph Barnes, Jonique Mills, Andrea Picton, and Shireen Parkinson were all offered $500,000 bail earlier this month. The defendants are accused of defrauding InSports of $222 million. And that's the news on PBCJ. Thanks so much for watching.